Thank you. And let me start by thanking both Kevin and Catherine for Heritage and AUL co-sponsoring this event. It's so awesome to see everything that AUL is doing on life. It's so great to have Heritage fully pro-life and leaning in to the pro-life issue. The entire movement is in both of your debts. And one other word of thank you, EPPC is a co-sponsor of this. That doesn't mean I actually did anything to co-sponsor this. One of my colleagues did, so I want to thank Rachel Morrison, who really spearheaded today's event on the part of EPPC. I worked at Heritage for almost a decade, a wonderful, enjoyable decade, and whenever I'm back, it conjures up memories. And I can remember we used to live a block from here, and I can remember the first time I saw my son's face. Although I didn't know it was his face. It was about 4 years ago, and it was a grainy ultrasound screen. And it wasn't until the ultrasound technician said, "That's your baby's face," that I knew what end was the head and what end was the butt. And it was the first time seeing one of these things. And then the ultrasound technician said, "That's the baby's heartbeat." And then when we went back, this was the 12-week ultrasound, we went back for the 20-week ultrasound, she identified every major body part. You know, this is the leg, the other leg, arm, that's the head, the heart, the lung. She wants to make sure it's all there, right? Never once did she say fetal cardiac polar activity. Never once did she say fetus, right? We know what the entity in the womb is. It's not an alligator, it's not a chicken, it's not inorganic matter, it's an unborn human being. Right? The past 50 years has been lying when the justices in the Roe opinion said, you know, we don't presume to answer the question of when human life begins. They did presume to know, and they said it wasn't until after birth. That's the implicit logic of Roe and of Casey. It was denying the reality that all of us can see with our plain eyes, and that all of us celebrate when we are happy about it. Right? Many of the first pictures for some of you in the audience in your baby books is going to be that ultrasound picture. Many of the ways that our families first find out that there's a new grandson or granddaughter or a niece, a nephew, a cousin is with the ultrasound image texted to family members. Which is why the most honest pro-abortion advocates, they don't make the stupid arguments, it's a clump of cells, it's not a human being. They try to make a more sophisticated, or in my mind, a more sophistical argument and say, oh yeah, it's a human being, but it's not a human person. Right? And any time in human history when we've denied personhood to a class of human beings, we've looked back and regretted it. Whether it was with our shameful legacy of slavery, denying personhood to people with the wrong skin color, whether it was the terrible Holocaust, denying personhood to people of the wrong ethnicity or religious background, we've always looked back in horror at doing it. And it's no difference with denying personhood to the unborn. Peter Singer makes one of the most sophisticated, or again, sophistical arguments like this. I was an undergrad at Princeton. You know, it's speciesism to value human beings in a way that you don't value animals. I live with a lot of animals. None of my animals have a personal nature. None of them. The reason we will sometimes speak of human beings as having disabilities, a cognitive disability, a developmental disability, is that there's something blocking the full flowering of the underlying nature, the personal nature. I don't expect any of my chickens or rabbits or sheep or goats to ever talk. I expect my newborn son to one day talk because I know his nature. And it's a human nature, it's a personal nature. He's made in the image and likeness of God. And what's true about my son, the almost 4-year-old who was, 4 years ago, I saw the ultrasound image, he speaks, he won't shut up. He loves asking questions. I know one day our newborn will do the same. It's the unfolding of that nature, and all of that was true when they were in the womb. None of this is, when we try to pass laws protecting these human beings, an illicit imposition of morality. You're legislating morality, you're imposing your religion on me. This is no more legislating morality or imposing religion than laws that ban adult homicide. Now, if the secularist doesn't have a good argument for why we should ban adult homicide, so much the worse for secularism, right? The burden's not on us to justify ourselves to the secularists. Whatever the argument is for why I can't kill Kevin and Catherine, it's the same argument for why I can't kill the unborn child. All right, why do I rehearse all of this? In a week, maybe 2 weeks, we're going to have to persuade our neighbors about all of these truths to then enact laws, policies, regulations to protect these children, to protect these mothers. I've just talked about how abortion harms the unborn. Abortion harms everything it touches. It makes nothing better. Abortion is terrible for women. It's not empowering. Many women feel pressured into abortion. They don't want to shout their abortions. They regret their abortions. Abortion's a risky physical procedure that has immediate physical harms. It can have long-lasting spiritual and emotional harms. It's perpetuated for 50 years now an inhospitable culture, assuming the male body is the norm and that female bodies are somehow defective males. It's what my EPPC colleague Erica Bacchiacchi refers to as asymmetrical reproduction. Human reproduction is asymmetrical. The male role and the female role are different. We've built an entire culture, an economic system, an education system, a society, assuming that my body type is the normal type, my wife's body type is somehow defective, and so we need to sterilize her body so she can compete in the marketplace and in the education system on equal footing. That's the lie behind Planned Parenthood v. Casey, that women need abortion in order to be equal, rather than saying we actually have to rethink some of our economic structures, our educational structures, our family life structures to actually respect the equal dignity of being embodied as male and being embodied as female. Abortion's been particularly devastating for people who are already on marginalized communities in American life, already on the peripheries. Look at lethal discrimination in the womb. People who might experience a physical disability aborted at elevated rates. There are millions of missing girls across the globe because of people lethally discriminating against girls. It's more dangerous to be in the womb if you are Black in New York City than to be born. More Black babies are aborted in New York City than are born. And some of this might not just be happenstance. Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, was a eugenicist. The push for contraception and abortion was, in Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's words, because there were populations that we didn't want too many of. We can't deny the underlying realities of how abortion has harmed everything. I could go on, but I only have a few more minutes, so I'm not going to keep going. I've filled an entire book, along with Alexander DeSanctis, on how abortion has harmed everything, has solved nothing. And so actually, Heritage is hosting an event for us in a week, so we'll be back to talk about that. I want to close on just one thought. I think the root of all heresies are forcing either-ors when orthodoxy is a both-and situation. I think the same thing, what's true in kind of the theological world, is true in the political and legal world, and is true for the pro-life movement. We need to resist, as we move forward, the false dichotomies. So people are going to say, is it about the states or the feds? Both and. We need good state laws and good federal legislation. There's a role for the federal government, both the executive agencies and Congress and the federal courts. This isn't the last court case. There are other cases we should be bringing to protect unborn babies. There's a role for the states. Is it the culture or is it the law? It's both and. We need the pregnancy resource centers. We need the pro-life groups. We need the groups ministering to women who regret their abortions. We also need good laws and policy. Is it the supply side of abortion or the demand side of abortion? Both. The supply, Planned Parenthood. We have to shut it down. We have to shut down lethal violence in the womb. But also, there are reasons why people think they need abortion. Why is there a demand for this? We have to address that as well. And then last thing I'll say, is it about prohibiting abortion or is it about assisting mothers? Both and. Look at what Texas did. It's a great example. The heartbeat bill, they banned abortion after 6 weeks. They also allocated an additional $100 million for the Texas Alternatives to Abortion program. The media covered the prior, they ignored the latter. Pro-lifers have been doing stuff like that. The Capitol Hill Crisis Pregnancy Center, vandalized just a week ago. They've been quietly assisting mothers in need for decades. Pro-life movement needs to keep doing it, keep doing what we've been doing, both and, on every false dichotomy, both and moving forward. We each have to ask ourselves, what is my vocation in life? And then whatever our given vocation, not everyone has the vocation that Catherine, Kevin, and I have, but whatever our vocation is, there's a way in which you can plug into the pro-life movement to make a difference. Right? And maybe it's volunteering at the local pregnancy resource center. Maybe it's making a lot of money and then donating it to the Crisis Pregnancy Center or to Heritage or AUL. Maybe it's becoming a policy analyst. Maybe it's working on Capitol Hill. Maybe it's running for elected office. Maybe it's serving on the school board. I know the one good member of the Loudoun County School Board. He's making a difference. Unfortunately, he's always outvoted, but it matters, right? And if we don't run for those seats, we can predict who will get those seats. Maybe it's if you're a business leader, not having your company pay for the out-of-state abortions of your employees. I mean, there's a corporate role in all of this. Maybe if it's, you're a business exec, not canceling pro-life books, not censoring pro-life voices on social media, which is simply to say there's a role for everyone. Not everyone needs to do what the three of us do. I mean, you have to, discern what your, kind of vocation in life is, and then figure out, given that vocation, how do I advance the culture of life? How do I build the culture of life? And there's a role for all of us. What we can't afford, when Kevin says, how do we scale up? We can't afford for anyone to be sitting on the sidelines. Everyone needs to be contributing. That's how we scale it up. Everyone figuring out my gifts, my talents, my opportunities, given where God's placed me in the world. What can I do to move the ball? And I don't have to go all the way to the goal line. Like, none of us on our own is going to, but I can take it to the next yard marker, right? And then someone else takes it from there. And that's how we get to the ultimate objective, which is, as Catherine said, it's abolition of abortion. No lethal violence in the womb. That's the ultimate objective. Overturning Roe is just the first step. It's not the end of the pro-life movement. It's the beginning of a new phase of the pro-life movement. And I'm glad to have so many of you as allies in this fight.